So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of the DCU discussion series. And if you're brand new here, you may not know what this is about, but we essentially discuss everything DCU with you guys submitting questions and us all expanding on the current discussion on the latest news, to tidbits, to theories about any and all upcoming projects in the DCU. Now, I haven't done this in a little while, since around the end of December, so I don't know about you, but for me, this is well needed to get my thoughts out there, and especially since we didn't really get anything out of the Puppy Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday, it just feels good to dive into all of this to tide us over until the next big thing. I hope you all enjoy it. If you do, do me a favor, leave a like on the video. It really does help me out. And one last thing, I'm just gonna say it to you watching right now. Yes, you. I mean, maybe you right there. In the past month of people coming back to watch my videos on a regular basis, 41.5% of you aren't actually subscribed, despite coming back again and again. Is that you? Maybe. Maybe today you'll hit the subscribe button. I don't know. Maybe you thought you had, but you're not. That's the point of me saying this. But enough self-plugging there. Into question one from Arcane. This is kind of a two-part question. First part, how much do you want Superman to make at the box office? And second part, realistically, how much do you think it will make based off of the reputation that DC currently has, and your opinion, and based on previous Superman movies? So, oh man, I guess your first question, how much money do I want Superman to make? I mean, providing it's good, and just me wanting this universe to do well as a DC fan, I want this to make a lot of money. Like, obviously. So how much do I want it to make? Obviously, over $1 billion would be amazing, but that's not me saying how much I think it will make. But how much do I want it to make? That would be incredible. You know, the summer of Superman, but we're up against other titans. Jurassic World, Rebirth, Fantastic Four, and Superman all coming out in July. Now, if you're a family, and I've heard some terrible things out, I mean, I'm very lucky, and where I live, next to a theater, the cinema prices are like £5, which is crazy because, what's that, like $7, maybe nearly $8? Obviously not including any concessions there, but that's quite affordable for me to go see movies. But I've heard some horror stories for some of you guys. Let's just say you're a mum and dad, you want to take your kid in July to see Fantastic Four, Superman, or Jurassic World Rebirth. Cinema tickets, as well as maybe getting a little naughty treat, can be well over $60+, like, a go, right? And this is just me, like, spitballing it. Maybe you're going to correct me, be like, Boba, it's more than that where I live. Now imagine your friend who's a parent or whoever it is trying to do that 3 times in 1 month. But I want Superman to make a lot of money at the box office, but will it is another question. Like, even if Fantastic Four does better than Superman, again, let me know your opinions down in the comments below. Fantastic Four still isn't going to do as well as it probably should do because of Superman and Jurassic World Rebirth releasing at the same time. Again, it is mad. Now, my realistic projection, oh God, man. I've always said, there's kind of two answers to this for me. I think it could make $700 million-ish, and that it should do better, but will it do better? That I really don't know, but 700 mil is where I'm like, hopefully we can get to that. And secondly, I've always said, if it makes the Batman levels of box office, so I think the Batman, Matt Reeves' Batman made around 780 million, like somewhere around there. And if Superman somehow made that, that would be a major W. But do I expect James Gunn's DC reboot, the first movie of Superman, to get enough box office sales to the point of where the Batman had amazing marketing? People seemed really up for it. Sure, there were always naysayers. There's naysayers in every scenario, but it still made 780 mil. Will Superman achieve that? That's why I shoot lower than the Batman's box office. Even if it is summer and you've got like a lot of cool movies to go and see, and maybe that means a few people, well, quite a lot of people out there might go see more than one, and Superman might be one of those in addition to the other 2 big summer blockbusters. But I would be very happy if it made past the 700 million mark. But if it made under that, like somewhere in the 650 plus million range, it wouldn't be great, but it wouldn't be surprising to me. And I don't think it would be super surprising to Warner Brothers, by the way. I've always said this. Like, obviously, they want this movie to do well, but what you have to bear in mind is I think they're aware that they are on an uphill battle. And obviously, I think they want Batman levels of money, at least 780 plus. And sure, obviously, they want $1 billion plus, but surely internally, they're readying themselves to be like, hey, this movie, even though it should probably make more, probably isn't for X, Y, and Z, but also you have Fantastic Four and Jurassic World Rebirth launching around the same time. Let's, like, put our projections for this internally, like, secretly we reckon it's going to make this, but if it makes more than this, well, then that's amazing. That's where I'm vibing all of this, and yeah, you can toss in the whole rep that DC currently has, but, yeah, I think I just more or less covered everything, but let me know your thoughts, man. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. So, up next, we have from Gut0908, when do you think we will get the first official trailer for Superman 1 with dialogue and context about the plot? Well, I would absolutely say that will be Cinemacon on April 1st, which we already knew. James Gunn from the past, he said that they're going to be there, maybe even with some cast members. They aren't screening the entire movie like Warner Brothers did with the Flash movie back in 2023 Cinemacon. I wouldn't really want them doing that anyway. Believe it or not, I think that would just lead to a whole different type of commentary about the movie. If they just gave it away, it could risk leaks. But as for an actual trailer, yeah, absolutely. And also, if Gunn does bring the cast and they make a bit more of a presentation about it, I think we could get some other nuggets of news coming out from press and journalists that I can make a whole separate video on. You know, sometimes when they get Q&As, they answer things. Hey, here's a new trailer. But hey, here's an answer to this, that, and some other things that we're excited to share with you. I expect stuff like that out of Cinemacon. Up next from Miguel, ZP5UN, probably a weird question since the DCU is barely starting, but do you think there should be a definite end, or like definitive end to the DCU, or do you think it should just be an open universe that we are in and get movies and stories without a definite endpoint? Absolutely the latter of what you said there. I don't think this needs to necessarily have that kind of formulaic approach, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but what built up to Infinity War and Thanos and Endgame? I know a lot of people might be like, but wait, Boba, don't you need an overarching story? I'm not saying you don't. However, that can spell a start and an end. Not that the MCU ended, but I think the apprehension Gunn has with doing something like that is not that the MCU is dead, but let's not pretend that it hasn't had that same momentum leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. If you forge a universe where it is interconnected, but you have all of these stories where some are more connected than others, but mostly it is just like the comic book universe of DC, where you might have a Teen Titans comic going over there, but you might have a Batman comic where he's investigating this with Clayface over there. You have Superman doing this over in Metropolis. You have Constantine over there chilling out, but then he might have an interconnected moment in the DCU with the Justice League Dark a few projects down the line after. You see what I mean? When you don't always do an overarching thing, I think that would be in better service of this DCU under Gunn's rule as a whole. So I don't think there should be a definite end to the DCU. I think that they should just focus on what they are already focusing on, making good projects, good scripts, good movies that are true to the tone of said character, and bringing that to fruition as best as they can, all while not totally ignoring connected stuff, because obviously that's fun, right? Having connected projects, and we will be getting those, I have no doubt about that. But I think utmost priority is just making kick-ass projects, and that's no different to releasing a hardback of this character in DC, a hardback of that character. Hey, pick up this one about that character. Good stories, right? World building overall, not necessarily story building, which is another question we're about to get into. So No Style Dutch here says, just to expand on all of this, any theories on what the Chapter 1 is culminating towards, if not a big bad? Or have people been misinterpreting James Gunn talk about not building towards a specific villain? And we also have the Animal Law saying, since James Gunn is world building and not story building, I want to see a JSA movie like what happened during World War II Justice Society. If you guys have watched me long enough, you know that I want a JSA. But my point is, what is the DCU Chapter 1 building towards? It is a bit different than I had initially thought when I was doing these discussion series videos a couple of years ago, because this is what Gunn said in an interview with Josh Horowitz about this big bad situation and overarching stories. So he says, yes, and I do think, these are interconnected stories, but there is no, people are always going, who's the big bad? Who's the big bad? Are there big bads for, connected films? Yes. But is this all about, hey, I'm telling this one story about this big bad? No. This is about a connected universe. We're world building. We're not story building. We're not writing one story that has a beginning, middle, and end. We're creating a universe in which people can go and join into this universe and experience it, and it's, much more like Star Wars. Now, I find that really interesting, and I really like that actual approach and his ideology on it, because I think that is, despite maybe some people may be a bit disappointed being like, okay, so there's not one big Thanos or Darkseid-esque level threat that they're doing. I think this is in service of the universe in the ways that I just went on about with all of these good stories. But Gunn also did say, how are there big bads for, connected films? Yes. So he said that there will be big bads in some fashion or another for some projects in the DCU that are especially maybe a bit more interconnected than others. So an example of a project that I feel won't be as connected or interconnected as others would be Swamp Thing. But could you have maybe a larger big bad between Superman, Peacemaker, and the Authority that Gunn might do, which kind of connects those, interconnected films together? Yes. But is there going to be the beginning, middle, and end? As Gunn says, we're not telling, we're world building, we're not story building. So is there going to be that Thanos leading up to Infinity War and Endgame? Not so much. And I think that is a better approach just in terms of how, and again, I wouldn't rule it out. Again, you could have something more grander happen towards the end of a chapter. But as he says, we're creating a universe in which people can go and join into this universe and experience it, and it's much more like Star Wars. And the quote continues, but that's the main point. In Star Wars, sure, you have like an overarching thing that happened in the Skywalker saga, but you have like interconnected projects. And a great example of this, I suppose, would be like how you have The Mandalorian. You had Moff Gideon as a big bad, but really, in the interconnected projects of Ahsoka releasing and stuff like that, it's like, oh no, there's Grand Admiral Thrawn. But these are like splintered different projects within that of the Star Wars universe that are all connecting together. And yet that is still a, worthy adversary, Grand Admiral Thrawn. But the majority of it is, his focus is, he's not ruling out a big bad or big bads for certain things, but they're world building, not story building. And that's not saying James Gunn doesn't care about stories. Before anyone says it, if anything, he really prioritizes story, characters, and emotion. He's just saying he doesn't want to do like a one story with the DCU in general, like the timeline of projects releasing where it's beginning, middle, and end. He wants a flourishing universe where, hey, you like a Swamp Thing comic book? You picked that up with Alan Moore. You liked it? Hey, we're going to do a movie. You liked Teen Titans? We're going to do that project. 7 years from now, we're going to focus maybe more on the magic users and greenlight a Zatanna project or a Justice League Dark project. But does it have to be interconnected and contribute to the big overarching kind of dark side plot? No. No, believe it or not. And I know I keep saying the same things, but I think that's the best way to look at it. And I do think that there is a big misconception of maybe, who is the big DCU Chapter 1 big bad, or what are they doing there? And I'm a part of that, by the way, because for the longest time, I was giving theories about, what is the overarching story? Because to be fair, they have said that Lanterns is a show where Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart uncover this ancient terrifying threat and mystery, this ancient horror. It's been described in all of those different ways, and that it is really important. And this is a quote to their overarching story in the DCU that will bounce back between different shows and movies. So they have kind of given that impression across, but I think what we can now put that down to is where Gunn said, are there big bads for, connected films? So not an entire chapter, but maybe certain projects that will tell a bit more of a cohesive story despite them being different projects. That is interesting. But yes, I think this info that we're talking about right now hasn't actually been dispersed out there to the whole DC fandom or DC fandom as a whole, to the point of where there will still be people thinking in a few months from now, who is the big Chapter 1 big bad? And I'm not even saying that we might not get the center. The center could happen. That could be a cool interconnected. I don't know. That is quite big. But again, the priority, I think, in the DCU is to just make good-ass DCU quality level shit that's true to the characters, true to the origin of those characters in the source material, and make a good-ass story with a good-ass script that's only going to get approved when it's ready. Does that mean a great movie? No, we need to see the movie and review it, but that's the approach. And yeah, that doesn't mean you're still not going to have a connective tissue between Superman and then the Brave and the Bold. And then they're like, hey, as Gunn said, maybe there's a smaller big bad between Superman and Batman where they're going to do a world's finest film and they come together as titans to clash against some big bad DCU villain. That isn't necessarily Darkseid level threat, but you get what I mean. So stuff like that is still going to happen, but just maybe in a bit of a different approach to even what a lot of people realize. But here, since we're talking about it, I think us all as a collective understand what's really going on now, as opposed to me being like, oh, is the center really the big bad threat of the whole chapter 1? I'm actually a bit further away from that now than what I used to be. But I think you guys can now understand after everything we just discussed. Now up next from Havoc Unbound, this happened when we got both Spider-Man and Black Panther in Civil War before their solo films, so this could definitely work. Now this is a question off of my Batman video talking about how Batman, hey, what if we see Batman sooner than what we think in the DCU, sooner than 2028's The Brave and the Bold? Again, not a confirmed date, but Andy Muschietti, long story short, said that Warner Brothers internally, the studio's strategy is to not have both Batman films releasing at the same time, so the Batman 2 has taken priority and the DC Batman movie will have to wait a bit. So, well, logically, the Batman 2 is coming out 2027 October, so as a result of that, the Brave and the Bold's going to come out after that, which is like 2028, and the whole idea is, well, are we really going to be waiting that long to see DCU Batman? Or can they find a way of not having both of these different Batmen conflict with one another through the means of maybe showing the DCU Batman in 2026's Clayface movie, even if just in a small role? I think that they could do that. I'm not saying they are going to do that, but absolutely, it would be different than having a Brave and the Bold movie and the Batman 2 release in a similar window to like Fantastic Four and Superman. Like, that's not happening. But what you can do is show DCU Batman in this Clayface movie releasing next year, like a whole year before the Batman 2 even releases. So Havoc Unbound thinks that it can work with regards to like Spider-Man and Black Panther, debuted in the MCU in Civil War. So maybe, yeah, you could do a similar thing there, even if it wasn't the original approach that James Gunn had in mind, such as maybe he thought Brave and the Bold would be coming sooner, but certain things have been retooled to be like, you know what? For example, Clayface wasn't a part of the original DCU Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters announcement video, but now it's been added in there. Not only that, it's coming out before the Authority movie next year. So, as a result, what if they're thinking, yeah, we could cast a DCU Batman just like we cast Tom Holland's Spider-Man, or they did that over there at Marvel, to know that he was going to get solo Spider-Man movies after that. Now, sure, I know everyone has different opinions on this, but that's why I loved making that video, because I do think it is such a real possibility. And again, Black Panther, before he got his own solo movie. Now, sure, you could argue they're not as big as Batman in terms of popularity, but Spider-Man is pretty huge, obviously. So, we got Mr. Movie Mafia here saying Batman debuting in Clayface would make so much sense. It's also a great incentive for people to see Clayface, especially if he has a sizable side role. So, sizable side role, I'm still not sure about. I likened it to seeing Ben Affleck's Batman in David Ayer's The Suicide Squad, going over after Joker and Harley, and he rescued Harley, that kind of thing. So Batman could appear at the end of the Clayface movie, even similar to Clayface One Bad Day, which is the very photo that James Gunn teased when he announced the project. You see the cover there with Clayface, and at the bottom, you have a little Batman. Could be a nod there, but at the same time, it could just be a photo from somewhat of a Clayface origin comic. As for a incentive for people to see Clayface, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it would make some people go, but maybe not everyone, believe it or not, because remember Black Adam? There was a huge incentive for diehard Snyder fans to go see Black Adam because Henry Cavill's Superman appeared at the end, and that movie barely broke past 390 million, and maybe 400 with like rental sales after that. You see, like, people didn't didn't show up. Now, C. Valencia27143 says, if Batman is in Clayface, it could be pretty cool to have his presence be like Darth Vader in Rogue One. I actually love that comparison so much because, you know, Vader, maybe even exclude the scene where he was talking with Orson Krennic. That was still an epic scene. But, like, in Rogue One, it's still completely about these other characters. But at the end, you had Vader show up, and he had such a presence. I love this comparison because you can also have Batman having such presence in Clayface. Like, tee him up to be this intimidating horror that Clayface by the end of the movie is terrified of, but also it's a soft introduction to Batman in the DCU, or like as I said before, an appetizer, an aperitif to the Brave and the Bold's Batman. Don't show too much, but show a little slither like Rogue One's Darth Vader scene to, you know, make fans salivate for more Batman in the DCU. Up next from Espectro del Rizoma 658, we have Dynamic Duo. So who should be cast for both Robins, and will it come before Brave and the Bold? Now, the reason why I chose this question is because I feel like there is a big, you know, discourse or like belief. Well, there's multiple beliefs going on with this Dynamic Duo movie. Sometimes, you know, I might be talking in a live stream, upload a video, and you might get a comment being like, oh, no, but really, because, you know, you still got the Dynamic Duo movie before that, Boba, so we're going to have the backstory of Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. And I'm like, hold on. What's making you think that Dynamic Duo is, you know, DCU canon? Because one thing I'll give you there is that it hasn't been confirmed as such. So therefore, technically, it could be DCU canon and a backstory to, you know, two Robins in this DCU Batman's Bat family. And as we know, right, I get why people may think that this is a DCU canonical story with Batman being, you know, as experienced as he is in the DCU, to have a Bat family built up around him to some extent. Damian Wayne's coming in the story, obviously, with the Brave and the Bold. That's the premise of the movie, a story about Batman and his son. But there are going to be other Bat family members peppered in there. You know, this could be a cool little kind of Jason, Dick Grayson thing, maybe even a prequel. I get what you're saying. But for me, with the announcement, I don't think it is DCU canon. You know, when projects are announced, like Clayface, which was a recently, in the grand scheme of things, announced project, Gunn explicitly said, like, hey, this is a DCU story. It's within the world of the DCU Batman, Corenswet Superman, you name it. With this, you know, we got comments here and there from Matt Reeves saying, I have wanted to make a film with Arthur and Swaybox for many years, and for that film to be Dynamic Duo, an incredibly special and unique Batman and Robin story for families, is a dream, Reeves said. I've always viewed this, especially with the animation type, this fun, family-friendly movie that is, you know, this animated thing, but ultimately something that will be in theaters, which is cool. It's not just going to be a streaming movie or anything like that, but it will still be an Elseworlds Batman and Robin story, you know, or between these two Robins, Dynamic Duo. And of course, hey, you could say to me, Boba, just because this is more family-friendly oriented and they're going through such a different visual medium of, you know, presenting this movie with CGI stop motion stuff, that doesn't mean that it's not DCU canon. I mean, look at Creature Commandos. Those are canonical DCU characters, but they are cartoons. You know, they're animated. Just because we're going to have a puppetry-esque Dynamic Duo movie, that can still be DCU canon. I can't argue with that. I'm just telling you, intuitively to me, until they say that it is DCU canon, I'm going to put a bet down on Dynamic Duo not being a prequel to The Brave and the Bold. And I say prequel just because apparently it's in the early days of Jason Todd and Dick Grayson. But again, you know, a prequel can technically come out at any time. So I don't know. I would love to know your thoughts on that. I know it's a bit of an old conversation there, but yeah, I don't know who should be cast. Maybe you guys can let me know just to answer the question again. And will it come before Brave and the Bold? That is the tough one because Brave and the Bold is a while away, like 2028-ish anyway. And Dynamic Duos is probably going to take just as much time to even develop, given how much stuff goes into cooking that up. Now, up next from Jet Uwu. 896. Okay, I'm never going to do that again. I hope Lanterns stays true to the comic book history and aesthetic instead of being ashamed of itself. I want them to actually wear the costumes a lot, use their powers, etc. So I feel like I'm going to have a bit of a mixed answer here because I completely understand in a fantastical universe where you have a flying super dog alongside Superman in that movie. Why wouldn't you have Hal and John in their suits a lot, using their powers a lot? So therefore, I see a lot of apprehension with this HBO, series that Lanterns is, with the vibe and aesthetic and tone, True Detective inspired that it is. People are saying, like, what if they're not in their suits a lot and stuff? Thus, is that being ashamed of itself? I don't know if that's the way to look at it, but I totally understand the desire because, hey, we're in a fantastical universe. It's embracing all of this comic booky stuff. Wouldn't they do that? Well, I think this falls under the fact that in this interconnected universe, despite everything being connected and canonical, unless you're an Elseworlds project, I feel like they are striving for individual flavors of tone. Now, Lanterns, the ironic thing about me saying that is Lanterns is obviously this situation of being a comic book where you have flying lanterns all over the place, and that is still very fantastical and comic book. But if you wanted to do a take on Lanterns where it's such that, again, we don't really know the past of the DCU. This is a living, breathing DCU where heroes have operated for a long time, villains. So who knows what the history of Hal is? Like, did he give up being a Lantern? Does he still technically have his ring, but did he lose his wife? And that's why he might... I don't know. Like, there's so much we have yet to find out, which is why I'm reserving judgment for those things. But to get to the point here, as much as I understand the frustrations and apprehensions behind the tone and vision for Lanterns, I do love the description of, once it is what it is, and I kind of embrace that. Like, okay, Kyle Chandler is Hal Jordan. Evidently, Hal's been through a lot already that we haven't seen on screen. I do dig what they're going for, and when they describe Lanterns as a True Detective-inspired show, I just do imagine them not going around in their suits 24/7. And I know that's going to put some people off right away. And hey, I'm not an oracle. I don't know that for a fact. Maybe they do walk into this town under Sheriff Kelly's care with these community secrets emerging and stuff. That's the premise of the show initially, with this murder in the American heartland, this murder in this town, I assume, in their suits. Maybe they do. But, if you're going to give that tone, an HBO True Detective tone, to two Green Lanterns investigating a murder and uncovering this ancient horror, I can imagine that you wouldn't want to bait out, or suss out any kind of conspiracy-minded man played by Garrett Dillahunt. I forget the guy's name right now from the top of my head, that character. By the way, whatever community secrets, if it's a cult, you don't want to walk in there with two shiny Green Lantern suits and a glowing ring. So I can easily imagine Aaron Pierre and Carl Chandler kind of having, I don't know, let's just call it daytime clothing. But of course, when they need to suit up, when the moment and need arises, they will do so. But I can imagine it being true to kind of reality, yet it's ironic saying that because this is, as Gunn has described it, as grounded like that, believe it or not, this is in this DC universe. These are two characters, despite what you're hearing, who will have glowing Green Lantern rings. There's no getting over that. So inherently there already. That is fantastical. But I love that blend of tone, and what I admire about it, despite completely understanding why some Green Lantern fans are pissed off, because it's like, hey, how would you feel if your favorite character was this far along? I get that. I can't really argue with that much. Yet I still, despite that, I'm liking the sound of what we're getting, and I wouldn't say it's being ashamed of itself. I think it's just, despite maybe having a Green Lantern comic or some animated project where they're walking around in those suits, I can understand the realistic reason as to why they might want to just investigate a little bit more undercover. If there's something that's, caught their attention so massively that they've literally sent in two Green Lanterns into a town in the American heartland. And since this is an episodic series, again, imagine if they just walked in there with Green Lantern suits equipped and their rings and flying around, be like, okay, what's going on here, boys? Nobody's going to say anything. So, do you see what I mean? You roll with me there. You can kind of see, the Woody Harrelson, Matthew McConaughey. Again, I'm not saying they're cloning that. I'm just trying to paint a picture. If you've seen True Detective Season 1, or sorry, if you haven't, do yourself a favor and watch it. The fact that they're saying it's inspired by the show in general, so not just season 1, you would totally understand the vibe they're going for. The fact that it's been mentioned as an ancient horror, that sounds nuts to me. Like, it genuinely, that's crazy. What could that be? And the fact that they've even gone to investigate this as 2 Green Lanterns is another big thing, because that begs such a major threat or something so crazy that must have happened. That anyway, like, this unfolds. They would want to go about it investigatory-wise. You wouldn't want to show and play all your cards at once. It's going to be kind of drama and spooky and serious feeling yet again, cut with the awesomeness of having a glowing Green Lantern ring. That's amazing. I really like the sound of that. But I also understand why someone might want full-blown fantastical campy flying around. Like, okay, right, who caused the murder in this America? Oh, are you the ancient horror? Okay, I know I'm taking the piss there a bit, but I just don't think this was ever going to be that anyway. But I have no doubt that they will use their suits, especially, I think, Jon Stewart. The reason why I say especially Jon Stewart over Hal Jordan is because I think with him being more of the rookie, and maybe, I don't know why I vibe that Kyle Chandler will be a bit more battle-worn, but I just feel like he will be. They're going to wear their costumes, but maybe not a lot, but they will use their powers, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. But it might not be, maybe, as much as some people want. That is one thing I will say. Maybe it's not going to be like all the time, every episode. And I can already see that being a complaint. Like, what if we didn't have a legit, like, construct or power showcase until, like, episode 3? Yet we still saw dabblings in Green Lantern light here and there, and I don't know, maybe Jon Stewart flying, but, like, I can imagine that being criticized, and fair enough so. So I would love to know your thoughts on that. Like, are you kind of vibing what I feel like the series is going to be based on the descriptions already? Or are you like, nah, look, I get that, but it should be this, X, Y, and Z. Now, from Jack Slade, U8M, saying, I feel like the fact that Sinestro has already been cast, plus the fact that Hal is much older than he usually is strong evidence that the ancient horror in Lanterns is going to be Parallax. He'll possess Hal, and then Hal will die, ultimately being replaced as the main Lantern by John. Maybe, you know, I've seen theories, like, with regards to maybe Parallax has already in the past possessed Hal, and that's why they cast Carl Chandler, because Carl Chandler's in his late 50s, almost 60, and that's why Hal is older, right? Because Parallax can age Hal Jordan up. But I don't know if that's the... I mean, you could argue, again, with the amount of history that Carl Chandler's Hal Jordan has had, maybe Parallax is a part of the past, and that's why he's a bit older. But I don't think they would ever reverse that and then cast a new, younger, Carl Chandler-looking person to continue being Hal Jordan. So I am sharing the opinion that, yeah, maybe Hal Jordan will bite the dust by the end of the Lantern show. So it could be the way that Jack Slate is saying here. Maybe the ancient horror, as per a lot of people have said since we first heard about this, could be something Parallax related. And since Carl Chandler is already an older Hal Jordan, with just his real life age, they could just be like, you know what, like, let's just do this, let's do Parallax or something. And I don't know, there's just something about Hal Jordan biting the dust and Jon Stewart taking over as the main Lantern, despite not as experienced yet. The dynamic, the thing I do like about that in the show will be really cool between Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan. I can imagine a dynamic where they don't gel well straight away, yet they really come to like each other. And maybe, let's just say, Hal Jordan, again, I'm not saying he's going to be a dick or anything, but maybe Jon Stewart's interactions with him warms him up a bit, brings him back into the glory days of being that Lantern legend Hal Jordan. We'll really come to love their dynamic, their relationship, but then right at the end, your boy has one last hurrah and sacrifices himself. I don't know, but I know that pisses off Hal Jordan fans so much who really wanted Hal Jordan to be more of a thing in the DCU. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Do you think it would be Parallax related? But yeah, I think we can all agree that it's quite likely Jon Stewart is going to be the face card, if you will, of Lanterns in the DCU moving forward. But anyway, guys, after a massive DC ramble session, I'm spent. So let me know your thoughts on my thoughts down in the comments below. We covered a lot, and some of those questions were super intriguing, like to the point where I absolutely need to know your thoughts. So I will be looking at them, interacting with some of your comments down in that comment section, so don't shy away. If you got to this point of the video, I'd really appreciate it if you help me out with a like. Again, consider subscribing and double check to see if you are subscribed in the first place. But I'm gonna love you and leave you, so again, thank you so much for your support. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.